Hey everyone, and welcome to our network. This is the Magical Miracle Network, and I'm here today with all of you with Dr. Nathaniel Mason. So, hey Nathaniel, welcome back.
Hey everyone, great to be here. So glad to be part of this and to spend this time in communion with you all. I'm excited.
Yes, me too. So, I'm just truly thinking we're going to have a great chit chat today about psychotherapy and A Course in Miracles. And one of the things we were talking about before we hit record is really how to take care of our physical vessels, this physical body
hmm
that we appear to be in, and we're just truly taking care of that. So I thought we could just start there, and then kind of go in the other direction we were talking about a few minutes ago. So I'm going to let you take over about taking care of our bodies.
Yes, that sounds great. So I wanted to acknowledge that this is something that some in the spiritual community might bristle at, but that means it's a good thing to lean into and to see what might be some of the limiting beliefs there are about the physical body. Because I think it's like what Ruth just said, it's a vessel for our spirit, and it's a vessel for identifying that, if we go back to that last video, that right-minded versus some of the wrong-minded thinking, and vessels need to be taken care of. And so I'm not here to promote like any kind of diet or say like everything has to look exactly like this or this is the perfect healthy body. I think there are some things that help us feel lighter and more in touch with ourselves and our chakras lined up and our soul lined up with our spirit, et cetera, et cetera. And the first thing I want to start with is flipping hydrating.
Okay, yes.
Water is so important. I have it next to me at all times, right here. A lot of times when we wake up, the reason why we're so tired and so sleepy and have a hard time acclimating to the day, a big part of it is water. If you drink a large cup of it in the morning, you actually find that you're a lot more alert and able to make more rational thoughts, and some of that brain fog from the sleepiness starts to go away. And then during the day, the same thing comes with afternoon slumps and just when we're in general feeling maybe a little overwhelmed or brain foggy. That water is so important to nourish us, and we don't drink enough of it, especially if like we're coffee drinkers or we're big exercisers. Always need to make sure that we're staying hydrated as much as possible. And I can say, as someone who has had my own mental health journey, still has my own mental health journey, a lot of times being dehydrated is a pretty big trigger for me getting into wrong minded thinking and getting into what I call kind of the slippery slope, catastrophizing. Something must be wrong. Oh no, I'm a failure. Oh no, I'm not good at something. Oh no, I'm disappointing others, all from being dehydrated. It really is something that can be that simple to help prevent that.
Oh, I just thank you for saying that. Yeah, and that's yeah, just taking care of our physical bodies.
hmm
And water is just such a simple thing we can do. Just so very simple. Yeah, I love that. So just in your own mind, is it 64 ounces about what we're supposed to be, this liquid in general, I guess, through the day? Is that about the number you're thinking or?
Yeah, I've heard anything from like 64 all the way up to like 90 something. I know there's a calculation based on your weight. I've heard other people say that when you're even slightly thirsty, you need to drink water. But what I would say is usually like for those who are, this is like a little Tervis kind of a mug. I probably drink in any given day water wise like 4 to 5 of these, and I still don't think that's enough. I think there's probably room for more. So in your if you're in the sun, like it's the summer, we like going out to the beach, and it seems so obvious, right? Like what I'm saying seems like it comes from a pamphlet, and I'm telling you, most people are chronically dehydrated, and it is not good for your thinking, and it is not good for clear-minded. Like I know what to trust, and I know what thought not to trust.
Oh, wow. Well, that's super helpful. So that's just a great tip for people watching this video today. Just, just remember to stay hydrated. It's a very simple thing we can do. Just hit the water every, hour, 90 minutes, just really taking
Yep.
that time to just sort of tune into your body. And I think that's important just right now, as I'm thinking about that, just really tune in and see, just sort of do your own body scan. Am I dehydrated? Am I hydrated? So let's talk a little bit about some other tips with keeping your body in a good place and sort of taking that Buddha's middle path. What else comes to mind as far as taking care of the physical body?
I think this one, it's a good question. I think this next recommendation I've seen a lot since the pandemic happened, which is the screen time that everyone has. It is so overwhelming to look at the amount of screens, whether it's our phones or our computers or, like Zoom calls, iPads, whatever it is that we're doing, even Kindles, right? Like electronic readers, it's still a screen. It's okay and healthy and recommended, and we should be giving our eyes a break. And a lot of times, even if you close your eyes for 5 minutes and you don't look at anything, you don't think of anything, you don't even have to do a meditation, you'll find that your mind slows down a little bit from some of the stimuli, and you're a bit more likely to go back to the screen that you're looking at with fresh eyes that don't feel as taxed or overwhelmed. Just as a quick tip.
Oh, I love that. I'm going to jot that down. So just close eyes, 5 minutes.
Mhm.
And would that be like an hourly thing or every just couple of hours? I mean, we do spend a lot of time on the screens. I mean, it's just all the phone, everything that we're looking at. So what do you do?
That's a really good question. I would say probably every hour at least. It makes me think of like the study tips they give you when you're in school. Like you can only do like what, 45 to 50 minutes before you need a break. I would say at least every hour, try to give your eyes a really mindful break because your body and your mind and your productivity and your health are going to thank you for it. It's just we're not meant to stare at so many different screens and switch back and forth so often. It's a modern thing that our bodies have not kept up with, understandably, because it's not the way they were designed.
Yeah, well, I thank you for that. So good, good, good. Two really good tips so far. One just really popped in my mind because I think a lot
Mhm.
of my clients have really struggled with this. I've been doing this for about 6 or 7 years now, a little spiritual counseling here and there. And one of the things I hear repeatedly is sleep. And
Oh my God.
I was
Yes.
wondering if we could talk a little bit about our bodies and sleep and what you've seen as a psychotherapist, as a counselor with people and their sleep. Are you seeing a trend with that?
Yeah, we are chronically sleep deprived. I actually in college used to work for a really interesting research lab at the UVA, their Department of Psychiatry, which was delivering electronic based insomnia interventions because of how widespread it was. It was really interesting, actually. And I learned through then, and I've seen since then, how chronically sleep deprived we are as humans. And it's not just the amount of hours we're in bed, it's the quality of the sleep we're getting. And one of the things that I've seen, and I would say this is 99% of the time, when I've been in distress or when I've worked with a client in distress, sleep deprivation or some kind of like turning off of the brain has been long overdue. Like it was absolutely a precursor to someone feeling really, really low.
Yeah.
Sleep solves so many problems. It replenishes, it like I'm not going to say hardwires, but it solidifies connections that we make throughout our days in terms of learning, in terms of habits. And we're just super sleep deprived.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say something else that I think people need to know, which is I hear a lot about you need to get at least 7 hours. I'm a 9 hour guy. I need nine,
Yeah, I'm the same way. I need 9 hours.
right?
A good 8 to 9 is what I need. And because we're just so much data is coming at us all day long, our whole system needs to recalibrate and reset through the evening. I like that quality of sleep. And you're 8 to 9 hours or 9 hours, and I think that's a great number.
Yes.
For a lot of people probably. Is there something as far as quality of sleep with your clients, is there
Mhm.
anything that you guide them as far as getting their proper rest, like just things they can do before they go to bed, or if they wake up and they can't get back to sleep? What are some of the things you might suggest to help people in that place?
Yeah, I may seem like a broken record, but there's a reason why the record's getting played. It's because it works. It's music we need to hear, right? Which is the screens need to go off probably at least 30 minutes to an hour before we start to sleep. And I know there's ways that you can move screens into having more warm tones and to get rid of the blue lights on it. That tends to keep us awake and very activated. But that can be like a meditation. It could be taking a shower to kind of wash the day off, sort of symbolically. It can also be like reading an old, I say old school, but just like a paper book, right? Or a hardback book as something to slow down your mind. And for people with really bad insomnia, one thing that I've kind of recommended that I didn't come up with, but it's worked for me and it's worked for some clients, don't focus on getting to sleep. Treat the experience like you're just resting your brain, and the sleep will usually come.
Oh, I like that. So we'll just say that one more time. So treat the experience just like you're resting. And this,
Yes.
so don't focus on like, I can't get to sleep. I'm not sleeping. Yeah, not that efforting into sleeping, but just sort of relaxing back into
Yes.
a beautiful statement. Okay. That's really helpful. Oh my gosh. Well, I love this. So anything else as far as the body goes, maybe one more thing that you can think of that's helpful with your clients that you've seen down through the last few years?
Nutrition. I think a lot of times I find this in myself. We go for longer than we need to with lower blood sugar. And it does not mean you need to be eating 24/7. And it doesn't mean that, just because it works for me or others, it's going to work for you. But one thing I will say is having little kind of healthy snacks in between meals, things that are like nuts and cheese. They have like fats, and sometimes they're healthy fats, and certainly protein, like that carries so much further than when I used to have like a pack of mini muffins or something like that. Which, when I'm like 8 or 9 or 10, I don't really notice the difference. But as an adult, if I have something it's a bit more processed, I feel the slump. Like I feel the inflammation, I feel the brain fog, and it doesn't let me do what I need to do with my brain and my body and my mind. And so I just really don't ever want to promote like disordered eating or someone feeling bad about their body or who they are. I will say there are things that we can do to be healthy and to keep us running in a way that's like a car. We want to be as efficient as possible. And we don't want to have to, have 2 or 3 hours of the day that's gone because we were in a slump from this huge meal we ate. Like that usually doesn't feel great afterwards. Once in a while, who cares? It can be fun,
All
but
right.
every day it starts to add up.
Yeah. Well, yeah, these are just really great and simple tips that anybody can use. So water, the eyes, just really resting the eyes, just sort of recapping some of these things, getting a good night's sleep, and quality of sleep, of course, is important. And staying off those screens as best we can, taking those breaks, and just taking maybe some healthy snacks and eating through the day, and eating organically, I think is always a great idea. Just the that level of your food not being processed, which I think you just made that comment, just making sure that it's just as
Mm.
healthy as it can be for your system. Wow, I love this. So anything else there that you want to highlight before we go into the next thing?
Yeah, I mean, if we need to connect it to the spiritual piece, there's a lot of good teachers out there who talk about the benefits a little bit more in depth that these tips and other really helpful tips can have on the body, and why it's really helpful for getting into our higher wisdom or our higher self and really tuning into that divine energy. One thing I will say about sleeping is it's a great reset button. Like just because you had a really bad day or a bad experience, a lot of times sleep. And one of the course teachers, I can't remember, talked about this. I can't remember who it was, but they said that when you wake up, it's the opportunity to begin again. And there's a reason why sleep is so impactful and it's so recommended.
Mhm.
It's your body's way of resetting so that you're not carrying all of that psychic junk from day to day.
Yeah. Oh, I like that psychic junk, right?
Mhm.
Okay, well, those are some great practical tips. And so what I'd like to do is sort of shift in a little bit to what we talked about last time and some of the conversations we've been having about the psychotherapy community and
Sure.
bringing in this idea of the two thought systems. And so while we're taking care of our bodies, doing the normal practical things through the day, through the week, through the month and the year, also identifying the idea that we've got a lower mind and a higher mind, we've got the ego mind, and we've got the spiritual mind. And there's a difference between the two. They're diametrically opposed thought systems. And that's right out of A Course in Miracles. And how this idea of the two thought systems, just that one idea, bringing it into the psychotherapeutic communities might be super helpful for therapists and their clients. And so I thought we could just touch on that a little bit again and any wisdom you have around that.
Yes, let's do it. And I think that when we hear that, sometimes we worry, like, do I have to immediately go from like being in my wrong minded to being in my right minded? Like, what if I feel like I can't do it immediately? That's okay. Therapy can be really helpful with that. I think what we're getting at is anytime you're crucifying yourself or villainizing yourself, which is different than holding yourself accountable, right? Holding myself accountable is a right minded thought. Crucifying and vilifying is a wrong minded. So even in that way, we reframe it. Like that's a good example of that.
Oh, I love that.
You
Okay. So
know,
can we just let's just break that down a little bit more, if that's okay.
sure,
Give the viewers maybe an example of that inner critic, and what that inner critic does, and then what the wisdom teacher inside of us does to correct that. So maybe an example would be a good thought here of how
totally.
we, yeah, I know you've probably got an arsenal of examples
My
there.
own examples and clinical
Yes.
examples. Yeah. I think a good one that is probably worth mentioning is relationships. I would say 80 to 90% of people come to counseling to talk about whether the relationship with themselves or others, some form of it, platonic, romantic, familial. And a lot of times in relationships, we can feel guilty for being triggered, or we can feel guilty for something we did for it to another person, right? So it's easy in those moments to think, I'm bad, I'm not worthy, or that other person is bad, or they're not worthy. And so technically, right, that is wrong minded thinking. It is, right? Because it doesn't make us feel good.
Right.
It's not really the truth in the greater scheme of things. But practically, that can be really hard to internalize in the moment. So you have to think like, what's the next right thought that I can agree to, right? Like, what's the next kind of way of thinking about this that I could reasonably expand to and think, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I got
So, in the example of, well, I'm a bad person because I just had this horrible fight with my partner and I said something really hurtful, maybe the next higher thought is, we've both been really stressed recently. We both were hurtful to one another. It's a little bit more neutral, right?
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. And I've definitely been there where I've just been like so frustrated, with it could be a family member, spouse, even
Oh,
a coworker,
yes.
where you just like, and you do have that moment. Sometimes we just project, we lash out, we're so angry
Hmm.
or just triggered. And so that just comes right out of our being. And so what I'm hearing you saying is just like know that there's you can pull yourself out of that into a better thinking or better feeling. Well, the thought does come first, a better thought, which is, okay, wait a minute, you can sort of pause. I think that's a good idea, just to pause
Yes.
and just sort of pull yourself into like, hey, I'm in my mistaken thinking, and how can I pull myself out of here and get back above the battleground? And hey, that was me projecting. And you could just, I would always start with, hey, I'm sorry, sorry I did that.
Yes.
It's not the true me, it's the false me that was engaged. And so, but the true me is coming out of the false me, and I want to just identify that was a struggle or a strife or whatever. And now what are we going to do to heal that, right? And that would be coming from my right mind. Is that kind of what I'm hearing here? Yeah.
That is exactly right. Like, what am I going to do to get on the path to understand myself and how I contributed to it, and the other person, how I contributed to it? And in the spiritual way of A Course in Miracles, right, none of it really happened, but it sort of felt like it happened because we were still had something to learn,
Right.
right?
Exactly. Yeah, where we made a faulty decision is right out of A Course in Miracles, where we've made faulty decisions before. What the Holy Spirit is doing is allowing us the opportunity to correct that. So we go from the mistaken choice for the ego as our teacher to the right-minded choice for the Holy Spirit as our teacher. And that's the correction. And when we apply the correction, it works. It really does, for our own being and then for the beings that are around us as well. So yeah, I do. I love that. I was gonna just ask you this, or just sort of share with you. We talked about this before we hit the record button about this little diagram I made. Do you think it's a good transition to go in there for right now for a moment?
I think we should. I think it's really helpful, especially with people
Okay.
maybe even not even just newer, like just need a reminder of this
Right.
concept.
Yeah. So just really quickly, everybody, what I want to do is just bring up what we're trying to do is help bring forward this information to the psychotherapeutic community about the two different thought systems. And it always comes to what you believe in. So so this first little chart, I'm hoping it's helpful if you can see this, Nathaniel, that our belief
Mhm.
system is that everybody on earth, I think, believes in love. We believe in peace. Um, and so that is the spiritual thought system of the Holy Spirit. So that we believe in that. So that kind of is the first thing that comes first. And then as it flows down into our mind, our thinking mind, we have this, the mental mind. This is our thought system connected to the higher self, the Holy Spirit. And so we have loving thoughts, compassionate thoughts, supportive thoughts. And then what is born out of that, because the thought always comes first, is that the emotion. And then the emotion, just really to make it so simple, you either have a love emotion or a fear emotion. And
Mhm.
so that would come next in the flow chart. And then there's a little bit of a line here coming down. This is like the mind aspect coming down into the energetics of the flow state. The energy coming into the physical body is what's happening in our energetics and our physical body is born out of who we're believing in. And so when we're in that place of love and compassion, support, we're going to have this direct our body because we've actually connected with that thought system. We are truly connected. This is our true self. So do you have any thoughts about that right there?
Yeah, I just had this example come to my mind, which is like if we're thinking about a really positive example of that, it's like people in recovery, right? Instead of turning to that desire of like, hey, I'm feeling really lonely or I'm feeling really sad. And like, I noticed that I really want to drink, right? Or turn to whatever my substance is, we're able to identify in that moment, like, wow, that feels weird in the body. Like I feel a tensing up, or I feel a compulsion, or it doesn't feel grounded. And so when you were talking about that physical energy and the way it comes out, the minute you turn it to something that feels healthier for you, like you will get a body response at some point that feels clear and
Yeah.
grounded and in the moment and less clogged up energetically is like the best way I can think of to describe it.
Yeah, I love that example. Thank you for that. That's truly helpful. Yeah, because oftentimes we want to fill that hole in our soul with something that's like, it could be food, it could be alcohol, it could be whatever that's out there, that we are just, whatever addiction that might be showing up in our timeline. So yeah, it's hard to break up with those addictions. It really is. I know
Mm-hmm.
personally, I'm 15 years sober. And I just was, finally I had the message. It was like, what am I doing here? This is definitely not working because, I was tired back to the physical body. I was tired all the time. I
Mm-hmm.
was always feeling like I was just walking around in kind of a heaviness. And since I gave up drinking, it's just my whole world has really turned around. Just real briefly, we're going to go. So that's the spiritual thought system. That's the Holy Spirit, higher self thought system, the true self of who we are. That's what we really want to engage in to heal.
Mm-hmm.
And then the false part of us is our belief in fear, the ego. And I hope this is helpful.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of the same flow chart, but it's the opposing thought system. And so this is the belief in having those thoughts of sadness, those thoughts of loneliness, those thoughts of abandonment. This is all coming from the ego mind. Okay. And then the emotion coming out of thinking with the ego is we feel all those feelings I just described. And so then your energetics are going to be all tied into that. And then your physical body, this is the block, right? Then your physical body is going to feel who you've been thinking with. So if you've got just basically, if you've got stinking thinking, then you're going to
Mm-hmm.
be feeling that in your system and going out into the world looking for those things to kind of fill the hole in your soul. That's the best way I can describe it. So those are the two different thought systems. Anything about that one that you might want to talk about?
Yeah, I think it's a great representation of what it feels like. And it can be so quick. That flow chart is so good at breaking it down. And I
Mhm.
think the way we experience it sometimes when we're in the ego is it's so quick, it's
Yeah.
so automatic. And I think mindfulness and awareness can actually help bring us more into where we are in that flow chart, like which step maybe we're in or how we're feeling it. And that's a lot of times what I've guided clients. And I really have to practice this myself too, to ask myself, like, what is my body feeling in the moment? Or where's my energy in the moment? And what is it trying to tell me? Like,
Mhm.
what is it protecting me from?
Mhm.
And I think that is such a good breakdown that you gave of like how that comes to be. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for that. Yeah, oftentimes you can calibrate just by a feeling in your body. You've got a really sick feeling. Okay, that's the ego. A
Yep.
really happy, flowing feeling, that's going to be spirit. And they do not integrate. They are
Mm-hmm.
diametrically opposed. And I think that's a very important point to make. Um, all right. Well, so any last words you want to bring up or any last thoughts you want to bring up to might be helpful for anybody out there today as we close out this recording?
Yeah. Just like something that I also see maybe a lot in the spiritual community that there's clarification that would be helpful with a loving and lovely caveat. Right-minded thinking does not mean you have to put up with something that is not in alignment with who you are. It is not being a yes person. It is not people pleasing. It is not putting up with addiction or abuse from yourself or others. The action of what you do in the world does not matter as much as the feeling behind it.
Right.
I think we get caught up into thinking like everything needs to be, and I love that you don't fall into this. I see this a lot with other spiritual teachings of like everything needs to be happy and we need to forgive everything. And that's all good and fine. But sometimes we have to act really practically. And sometimes it's, I'm lovingly going to put myself first and not invite this into my orbit of being.
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. Sometimes love says no. Sometimes love says not now. Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
love says I need a break. Sometimes love says, yeah, I'm going to change jobs. It can be a very
Yes.
living thing to get out of a circumstance that it just doesn't, it feels very incongruent with your particular script that you're playing out. So if you're really getting guidance, from spirit, like, hey, this isn't really serving you anymore, then it might be time to investigate other options. So
Yes. In a loving way. Absolutely.
a
Such a
very,
good reminder.
yes, a very loving way. Well, Nathaniel, thank you so much for this teaching today. Really taking care of our systems, taking care of our body, the water, the sleep, staying off the screens, those kinds of things to really keep us sort of in the flow state, as we're calling it these days, and out of the blocking state of the ego, because we want to keep our systems just these vessels for spirit as clean and clear as possible.
Yes. And don't judge ourselves if we slip. We all slip. It's just about recognizing it and choosing again.
Yes, I love that. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and hit that stop button and give you the last word.
Thanks, everyone. There's a good podcaster who always says, if nobody's told you this today, I love you. So if nobody's told you this today, I love you. I want you to love yourself, and happy July.
Thank you.